Hello out there. This is Steve from GuitarZoom. I'm going to give everybody just a minute to come on in and say hello and get set up here. While you're coming in, I put a link up on the chat that you should be able to see for downloading. There's a PDF that I want you to download if you can. And if you can print it off, that would be even more awesome, because we're going to talk about that little chart in a little bit here. And so when you get done with this webinar, you're going to walk away and you're going to have kind of an outline that you can use for your playing to sort of organize yourself with. So up on the top there, you should be able to see there is a link for a PDF to download. So if you can, please download that. And if you can do even more, try and print it out, and then you can write on it, because we're going to be doing a bunch of stuff with it. So. Hey, Daniel, how you doing? Hey, Don. Hey, Randy. Hey, Doug. Hey, Sean. Hey, Jazz. Glad you guys could take some time out of your day to hang out for a little while on a cozy Wednesday. It's actually very nice out here. I live in North Dakota, and it's either way too hot or way too cold or way too windy or way too rainy. And right now, it's absolutely perfect outside. Can you guys see the link? Let me post the link here and see if you can see it. Okay. And I just posted it in the chat, so hopefully you can see it up there. Hey, Robert. Hey, Tony. Hey, Scott. Hey, Perry. Hey, Francesca. So glad you guys made it. Hey, Randall. Hey, Scott. Hey, everybody. Cool. Well, everybody's coming on in. So once again, I just want to say thanks for taking time out of your day to hang out with me for a little while. I'm at home in my little makeshift studio where I practice, and I do a lot of the writing and stuff for a lot of the courses that I come up with. And then if I have to do something on the fly, I do it here. Hey, guys. So what we want to do today is we want to start talking a little bit about soloing in the real world and what that really means to solo in the real world. So if you've got that PDF, I'm going to show you this real quick. If you've got a pencil and you can print off that PDF, please do so. Hey, John. Hey, guys. If you can't, just follow along. And, yep, you can't see the download. You guys are having problems seeing that link, huh? Not sure why it's not staying there. But I'll just keep posting it every couple of minutes here. So you can, it's a real simple PDF, but what you're going to do if you can is you're going to print it off and get ready to start writing on it, okay? I'm going to give you some tips on how to approach soloing. Hey, guys. The problem that I had for many, many years, and I'm not going to waste your time with just talking the whole time, but when I first started playing, I learned how to play a billion songs, and I learned how to, I learned stuff like scales and things like that. But the biggest problem that I had when I first started learning how to play is I couldn't put it together. Like if all of a sudden I needed to jam with a band, I couldn't think of anything to do, or I would play the same pentatonic stuff over and over and over and over. And it just wasn't very exciting. So that's where I came up with the idea of real world soloing, was to give you a taste. Hey guys, to give you a taste of what to think about when you have to solo over realistic things. Like sometimes everything doesn't always make sense. You know, I mean, a lot of times your song will be in a key, and we're going to talk about that, and all the chords fit. But man, sometimes it just doesn't work that way. Sometimes you're approaching something and it doesn't make any sense. And that's what I want to talk to you about a little bit today. So as everybody keeps funneling in here, what I want to do is, again, remind everybody, please download that PDF and print it off if you can, and get ready to do some writing. Okay, if you've got a pencil or something nearby, and if you don't, it's okay. Hey, John. Hey, Babs. Hey, Christopher. Hey, Tony. Hey, Bravo. I'm so glad you guys could join me today. Lou got the PDF. Thank you, Lou. All right, so let me do this while you're getting that. I'm gonna share my screen with you here, and just kind of show you what our breakdown is going to be. Okay, so now you should be able to see my little screen here. Learning to solo in the real world. There's really 3 levels to learning how to do this, okay? The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about what key and what flavor the jam is that you're going to be playing over, whether it's a jam track, whether it's a band, whether it's a song that's written by somebody else, whether it's something you're writing, whatever it might be. That's the first level. The second level then is we need to figure out whether or not what you're going to solo over is a logical element or an illogical element. And then the third thing we're going to do is we're going to discuss the tools that you're going to need to be able to approach these soloing tactics that you're going to be implementing. So, hey, Rick. Hey, Randy. Hey, guys. So let's go ahead and get started here. And while I'm doing this, if you can't get the PDF, it's not a big deal. You could just grab a piece of paper and write down those 3 lines and write down major, minor, logical, illogical, and tools, and it would work just fine too. But honestly, I would like you to try and grab a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper and write this down, because it is going to be beneficial for you. The duration, today the webinar will go for 1 hour. I won't go over an hour. I've got my 7-year-old chomping at the bit behind the door there waiting for me to get done. So 1 hour will be going from 7 until 8 o'clock. So I'll try and get in as much as I possibly can. Hey, Jim, nice to see you. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. What I want you to do, and I'll do the best I can to watch the chat here, but what I want you to do is I want you to look at this first line here, major and minor, okay? Now, what I want you to think about is when you've got a song that you're going to play over, you've got to decide whether or not that song sounds predominantly major in flavor or if it sounds predominantly minor. And what I want to do for you is I want to help you in building sort of a chart of some styles of music or genres of music, if you will, that would be more predominantly major. Now, your chart is going to look probably a lot better than mine because I've got to try and put this text up here. I do a lot of videos, but I'm not overly computer savvy, so I've got to try and just type these in over here, and it's just going to be a big mess. Yours will look better, but you'll get the idea. So here's what's going to happen. Let's say, for instance, major. Now, remember, everybody, what I'm going to talk about right now is not etched in stone. Okay, let me show you my first example. For instance, one style of music that is predominantly major is pop music. That doesn't mean that all pop music is always in a major key. That's simply not true, okay? There are sometimes pop songs that are in minor keys and things, but I'm just going to give you a generalization to kind of think about. So if you're in, a pinch and all of a sudden you've got to think, well, what am I going to do with this thing? If you're soloing over, it's predominantly major, okay? So that's our first setup. So if you can, hey, Jay, guys, throw me some styles of music that you think would be predominantly major, and I'm going to do the best I can to keep trying to type them up here. Anybody got any ideas for a style of music that's predominantly major? And you can, of course, fill this out with as many things as you can possibly think of. I'm just going to get you a few different ideas as we keep going, okay? All right, awesome. I see country, and that is true. Country is predominantly major, okay? That's a good one. Thanks. Any other ones? Cool, all right. So we've got folk music. That's predominantly major. You got it. Thanks, Jim. Allman Brothers. Okay, good. Southern rock. Southern rock is predominantly major. Motown. Awesome. Reggae. You got it. Yep. Country. Yep. And rock and roll, we're going to get into rock and roll in just a second here. Yep, Southern rock. Okay. How about modern punk? Okay. When you think of like, for the most part, bands like Green Day and things like that, that's predominantly major. Jazz can be predominantly major. That one's a little bit all over the place, but sort of. Okay. So let's stay with that. What I'm going to add here, I'm going to add happy music. Anything that sounds happy is probably major, right? We've got folk in there. We've got pop, bluegrass. Good job. Bluegrass is another one. Okay. So there's some different ideas. Now, what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to move this over here and just kind of get it out of the way. And then I'm going to make it all smaller here. So just give me a minute. Use my immense skills here. I'm kidding, of course. Okay, there we go. Okay. So those are the kinds of music that would be predominantly major. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move to the center. And right in the center, we're going to put blues. Now, blues is an interesting style of music because blues, as many of you know, when you're playing over a major blues chord progression, you a lot of times solo minor over the top, even though it's a major chord progression. So blues is sort of the entry to illogical music. Okay, we keep going. There's all kinds of places we'll go with that, but blues kind of tickles on the line. So that's why I got it in the middle, is blues can be major or minor when you're soloing. Okay. Now, also, I'm going to add this for you guys to answer some of your questions as well. Right here, I'm going to put rock. And over here, I'm going to put rock as well. Okay. So rock can be major or minor. Okay. Rock is kind of going, sorry if my screen's going out. Hopefully you can see it a little bit right there. So rock is predominantly either major or minor depending on the song. If you think of like an AC/DC tune, right? If you're let me stop this just for a second and I'll come back to it because I want to make sure you guys can see me here and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so here's me. Hello. So as you're writing down this chart, what I want you to think about is that on that first level, you've got major on one side and minor on the other side. Blues is kind of dead center. Then we've got all the stuff that's mostly major over here, leading to the middle. And then we've got the stuff that's mostly minor. So rock, the reason I have rock kind of surrounding that is rock and roll tends to be very bluesy in nature. So for instance, if I was playing something like this, if I played... It's a major chord progression. But when you go to solo over the top, you could do minor. Right? The reason you can do that is because of the rules of blues. Okay? And again, real world soloing is going to talk in detail about all of those things, why you can do that and how you do it. Now, again, we only have an hour, so I don't want to spend a whole ton of time just on this chart. I want to get you guys playing some things. Okay? So, AC/DC, you got it? Yeah. So what happens then is as we go further to the minor side, and just bear with me if you're having kind of a hard time, if it's kind of out of focus, just bear with me as best you can. Okay, so now we're on the minor side of things. Okay, now on the minor side, what would be some styles of music that would be predominantly minor? Can you guys think of something that would be predominantly minor? Yes, absolutely. That is the big one, is metal. Metal, hard rock. That's another one that's predominantly minor. Awesome. Sad songs, good job. Sad songs are, again, sad songs could be major. Classical could be either. Thanks, Jim. Classical could be either, but we'll put it in here. That's fine. Some stuff is very major. Yeah, ballads, you got it. Funk music, predominantly minor. Predominantly dominant seventh, really, kind of in the blues vein, but absolutely. Gregorian chants, yes, Gregorian chants. Gaelic, yes, absolutely. Goth, fusion, Latin. Yeah, you see, this is so awesome. Gospel could probably go both ways, but I think you guys have totally got it going here. So what I want you to think about, and I'm going to make this a little smaller again here. Just give me a second. There we go. Okay, so this is the first step, everybody, is that you want to start, and I'm just going to leave that up there for a minute. Okay, so everybody can see that, and you can kind of write it down. And of course, on your own, I want you to go crazy with this. Okay, most Jewish folk songs are minor. Perry, is that true? Most Jewish folk songs? I am not very familiar with Jewish folk songs, so I don't know, but is that really true? A surprise metal is minor. Yeah, metal is very minor. Metal tends to stay away from the kind of thing for sure. Santana, yes, very minor for sure. Yeah, you got that. So that's the big thing for us, is that we want to get used to being able to think about the differences here. Okay, so the first step here, okay, is that now I'm going to give you just another 30 seconds. I'm just filling a little space. I'm sorry, but I want to make sure that everybody's got the idea, so you're writing this down. And then I'll take this off the screen, and then we're going to move to step 2, which is going to be the logical and illogical, which is really the nuts and bolts of what this whole real-world soloing is really about. All the replies are going into the chat. They're just going in privately so I can go through everything and monitor it. Otherwise, Randall's asking a question. Otherwise, people start having conversations and I can't see the questions because everything flies by too fast. So what happens is we move to that second level now, where we have to decide whether the song is logical or illogical, okay? Now, logical would mean that the song fits the key, the song fits the theory. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to know everything about theory and all that sort of thing, but I'm telling you, don't be afraid to step into some of those zones, even to study the fundamentals of theory. So, for instance, if you know what a 1-4-5 is, if you know what a major scale is, if you know what a mode is, and of course, real-world soloing is going to talk about all those kind of things. Yeah, John, I mean, what you're talking about right there is a mode, which is what I was just saying. John mentioned, he said, Sultans of Swing is in D minor, which is actually in the key of F, which is what a mode is. And those are all things that we're going to talk about in real-world soloing and in Music Theory Made Easy, which is pretty darn cool. So let's define logical and then get to the good stuff, which is really the illogical. What the heck do I do with this chord progression that doesn't make sense? So if you have your guitar handy, grab it and let's do some playing here. So in a logical chord progression, the first thing I want you to think about is, again, the definitions here. So and I'll put these up on the screen in a second, but if you have your pencil, write this down. Number 1 is you want to find the key or the tonal center, okay? You want to find the key or the tonal center. And again, if you can't really see the screen, just do the best you can. I'm going to write this down for you right now. So number 1, find the key or tonal center. And the reason I say tonal center is some people don't really know keys and things like that. But if you're listening to a song and some chord seems to stick out for you, that's probably the key that the song is in. It might start and end with that chord, whatever it might be. But we want to find with our ear the tonal center of the song that we're going to play over. The next thing we want to do is we want to figure out what chords are being used. Okay, that's going to define whether or not what we're playing over makes logical sense or illogical sense. The next thing is we want to define it then. Is it logic or illogic? Okay, and then 4, we're going to move to our tools. Okay, so this is, if you guys can see this okay, this is what you're going to do. There you go. Those are the steps that you're going to take. You're going to listen to the song. If you were listening to Brown Eyed Girl, for instance, you'd have to decide what is the tonal center? What key is the song in? What chords is it using? And once we've established all that, we can then define whether or not this song is going to be approached from a logical standpoint or an illogical standpoint. And then we're going to move into our tools and we're going to start figuring out what the heck we're going to do with this thing once we've established all that. And of course, that's the next thing for us to talk about. Okay? So what I want to do here, if you've got that written down, hopefully everybody's got that. Okay, I'm going to come back out to me. Actually, let me make sure. Whoop. Okay, can you guys see this okay? Can everybody see my screen? Hopefully you can. Hopefully everybody's able to copy that down. Tom, like modes and, yeah, all that stuff. What mode is the Sultan of Swing is in natural minor? It's an Aeolian, which is a really common mode for sure. And we talk about modes in real world soloing. So some of you say you got a really good view. Some of you say blurry. I'm sorry, I'm just doing the best I can, guys. So, okay. So here we go. I'm going to stop it now. We're going to come back out to me. All right. So now I want you guys to take your guitar and take the logic that you have, and then I'm going to tell you these tools, but I want to see what you do with this. So let's say we were going to solo over this. Okay. I'm going to play this. I'm going to play G, C, G, D. Okay. Now, who can tell me, first of all, what key is that in? Yes. Yep. I'm just watching everybody's things here. You guys are doing awesome. So what key am I in? If I'm using G, C, G, D, what key am I in? And I know there's about a minute wait between my transmission and your reception. So I'm just going to give you a second here. Good. Yes, you're absolutely right. It's in the key of G. You got it. Thanks, Bob. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Look at all you. G. Okay. So now let's define this. For those of you that might not know it was in the key of G, or if you maybe guessed at it because it was a tonal center thing. Okay. So we know that it's in the key of G. What are the three chords? The three chords are the G, the C, and the D, which in music theory, can anybody tell me? In music theory, we refer to the G, the C, and the D as what? In music theory. There you go, Robert. Thank you. A 1, 4, 5. That's right. So I'm playing a 1, G, going to the 4 chord, which is C, going back to the 1 chord, which is G, and then going to the 5 chord, which is D. Okay? So number 3 says, then do we define this as logical or illogical? Okay? Is it logical or awesome. Glad to see you're here. Okay? It's logical. You got it. That's right. So, okay, so now here's the next step, guys. We're going to move to the tools now, and I'm going to give you a few more chord progressions, but I want you to start thinking about some tools here. All right, so I'm going to go away again. I'm going to pull up my screen again for you. Okay? So here comes the screen. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen, present it to everybody. Hopefully you can see this okay. So tools. So the first tool that we've got, friends, if I can get this to work, come here. The first tool is knowledge. Okay? And knowledge is going to be fretboard theory. Sorry, should spell it right. That will help. Or music theory. Okay. And then just so I can finish this off and I can get back to you guys again, I got to write this down quick here. Chord. You'll be able to see this. Chords. Scales, and arpeggios. Okay, I'm going to leave that up there just for a minute so you all can see that. I'm going to make it a little smaller on my screen because I got a lot of crap to write down for you. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Okay, so the first tool is knowledge. Fretboard knowledge or music theory knowledge. Okay, and again, I'm going to give you a minute to write all that down. Let me know when you've got it. If I just get a couple of people that say they've got it, I know I'm giving you enough time here. Okay, now, what is fretboard knowledge and or fretboard theory and what is music theory? Okay, so I think we'd all agree that we understand what music theory is. It doesn't mean we know everything about it. I certainly don't know everything about it. But what's fretboard theory? Fretboard theory to me is real world playing, which is probably what you know how to do quite well. It's what I started off doing. I didn't know music theory until I went to college. Okay. What I did, thank you guys. Thank you so much for telling me. When I first started playing, I knew what I saw on my fretboard. I didn't understand how it worked. I just knew what I saw. I learned how to play a pentatonic scale because somebody showed it to me. I didn't understand what it was. I didn't understand how to use it. I just knew what it looked like. But the truth is, you have to remember that that is hugely valuable. I always try and say this. I love music theory. I absolutely love it. But it's not the be-all, end-all. It's not the answer to everything. It's the answer to a lot of things. Okay? Music in the real world, you have to approach different things differently. I don't play over blues the same way I play over metal. There's going to be some overlap here and there. But, you know, when I play different things, if I'm playing country, I'm going to approach it differently than I would playing, you know, over, again, a metal tune or something like that. So for me, fretboard theory, everybody, is what you can see on your fretboard. Okay. Do you know notes on your fretboard? Do you know your bar chords? Do you know your open chords? Do you know your pentatonic scales? Do you know diatonic scales? Things like that. You might not understand everything about them, but you're able to see things on the fretboard. Okay. So let's just keep going here and try and get as much of this in as possible. And then I'm going to give you a couple more examples. Okay. So we've got this knowledge. We're looking at the song, like I just played G, C, G, D. So we're looking at that. Now let's come back to all of you guys, okay? With our knowledge, whether it's fretboard knowledge, whether it's music theory knowledge, and I'm telling you, you need both, okay? In the long run, don't be afraid of music theory, because you and I could talk about this and you'd know exactly what my answers are if you don't already. So if you were going to solo over this in terms of a scale, okay, we already know our chords. It's G, C, G, and D, and we'll worry about arpeggios later. But if we were going to choose a scale, everybody, okay, what scale would you use to solo over G, C, G, and D? What scale? What options do you have? Okay. Awesome. Yep, you're right. We have the G major scale, right? Very good. Thank you. You've got the G major scale. Now, there's lots of scales we're going to talk about in real-world soloing. There's tons of them. But you're right. We do have G major. What else do we have? What's the other big one that we need? Besides G major, what's the other scale that we can solo in? Well, not A minor. Nah, E minor, kind of, but it's a relative. You got it. There you go. Thank you, Lori. Major pentatonic. You've got your G major pentatonic scale. Now, G major, and again, this is where theory becomes a problem, is because people will go, well, G major diatonic and G major pentatonic are the same thing, except two notes are missing. In theory, that's true. In application, it can be very different. Okay, and that's what the next tool is going to be that we're going to talk about. When I play in G major, I look at my fretboard as much more melodic and spacious. When I do whatever it might be. When I play pentatonic, I tend to play more rock and roll, riffy, patterny stuff. Okay, they are coming from the same place, but the way I react to those is very different. And it's really important, everybody, to remember that, okay? I've always tried to get people to understand this. Don't try and take all the information that you learn and try and just make one streamlined thought. What I've always thought about, as bizarre as this sounds, I've always thought about it as levels, okay? I see things three-dimensionally. So if I've got chords down here, and I've got a scale here, and I've got a scale here, and I've got an arpeggio here, and I've got licks here, I can kind of see through all of them, and I can play on each one of these levels. I can move through these levels and make my solo sound different, where if I take it all and I compress it into one thing, the problem is that you're playing the same thing over and over and over, which for a lot of you is the problem. Like, you see the fretboard as pentatonic, even though you're studying whatever and whatever, and then you go to play and you just do the same things over and over and over. So understand that major pentatonic and major diatonic, they are coming from the same place. It's your approach, okay? So that's what I want you to think about. So let me share the screen again. I'm going to write down the next tool for you to start thinking about, okay? And again, we talk about all this stuff in real world soloing, but I want to get you all this so you can get going on your own here and then decide whether or not this is something that you want to look into. So we got musical tools. Okay. The first one that we're going to do is rhythm. Second one, melody. Third one, dynamics. Fourth one is phrasing. And then the fifth one is patterns, licks. And yeah, we'll leave it just like that. So if you can write that down, I'm going to make it a little smaller so it fits on my screen a little bit better there. So there's number 2. Sorry, there we go. There's number 2. Okay, so number 2, this is the other thing we're going to talk about in real world soloing, is not only the setup, what key are we in, whether or not it's logical, whether or not it's illogical, and then we define what chord chords we're using, what scales we're using, all of those kind of things. We're going to move then into talking about musical tools, thinking about rhythm, jiving up your rhythm. A great technique that I use, which is going to come up in a second here, is a technique called meandering, where you just kind of move around the fretboard, right? And you're just making up stuff. You're just moving around trying to make different kinds of things up, okay? Melody, which is really, 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 really important. Where would what is dynamics? We'll get to that in just a second. Where would harmony be? Well, that's kind of a complicating question, Tony, Daniel, because harmony is a theory thing. Like if I'm playing a melody line and somebody else plays a third above me, that's creating harmony. And that's a little bit different, although I don't know which course I've got that talks about that, but I talk about it in Music Theory Made Easy as well. So anyway, melody is going to tap into this third section, this creative tools section. But really what's happening with melody, if you break down melody, Zappa called it noodling, Jim says. That's exactly what meandering is. Meandering is a killer technique because it exposes your fretboard, and it also exposes your limitations of what you can actually see. Yeah, it's just awesome. I'm glad that you mentioned that, Jim, that Zappa called it noodling. It's the exact same thing. It's not necessarily it's obviously not the be all end all of soloing, but it's a great way of learning to move around the fretboard. So melody is basically this, everybody. You're taking a chord, let's say G, for instance, and you're visualizing the G chord on your fretboard. So I'm going to come back out to me for a second here. Let's say I'm visualizing this G chord. Okay? And I've got this G scale sitting right here. Okay? What melody says is, and this is quite simple, if I played a chord and I wanted you to sing over that chord, you only have 2 choices. The sounds that come out of your mouth are either going to be compatible with the chord that I'm playing, or they're not, right? I mean, if you're not a singer, the sounds that come out probably don't quite match the chord. So one thing that we need to talk about, and we do in real world soloing, is learning how to follow these chords around to create melody, okay? So for instance, if I was playing a G chord and you went to solo over the top, if you did this and you played a pentatonic, it's going to sound awesome. But what it's lacking is melody. So we could take that, we could make some cool rhythm things, all kinds of stuff, but we're still lacking melody. And depending on the song, depending on the style, all of those kind of things, it might really require something to be melodic. So if I was playing this, if I play G, D, C, G, a great tool that you can start doing is to play melodically. You start thinking about those 3 chords and you start basing your soloing off of the notes of those chords. So for instance, G's being played, I'm going, and then here comes D, C, back to G, okay? Now, you don't have to play melodically the whole time. It's a tool. It's not like every solo has to be completely full of melody. Some solos do, some solos don't. Some styles of music do, some styles of music don't. If you were playing over a Slayer tune, you're not really worried that much about melody. If you're playing over Brown Eyed Girl, if you've never tried to solo over Brown Eyed Girl, it's actually kind of a hard song to solo over because it requires logic, it requires melody, it requires phrasing. You can't just go in there and shred around the fretboard. You actually have to try and make something that sounds musical. So the third thing on that list that I just gave you was dynamics, and people were asking, what is dynamics? My definition of dynamics is contrasting ideas. If something's loud, play soft. If something's high, or if you just played high, play low. If you played fast, play slow. If you played major, play diatonic. If you have the option of playing major and then minor, do that. If you were following the melody, you stop following the melody, okay? You try and, this is where those levels come in that I was just talking about. You try and make things interesting so you're not doing the same thing over and over and over, so it gets boring for you and it gets boring for your listener. You're trying to find interesting ways. Bab says, so need to know the notes and the strings of the chords? Sort of. Again, this goes back to that fretboard logic versus theory logic. Think about this, Babs. If you knew, for anybody out there, if you know your theory, what notes are in a G major chord, not the scale, the chord, what notes are in G major, the chord G major? What notes do you have? Now, wait just a second because it's going to take a second, but I want people to tell me if you know what the notes are in the G major chord, what are they? Yep. All right, good. Exactly. So thank you. So the notes in the chord G are G, B, and D. Now think about that. If you didn't know the notes of the chord G were G, B, and D, if you didn't know that, that might be a really nice thing to learn. But that's not the answer, because even if you know where the notes are G, B, and D, you still have to know where they are on your fretboard, right? If you know it cosmically, if you know what those notes are, that's awesome. But you still got to find them on your guitar. Okay? Now, let's look at this from the fretboard theory logic. Okay, Babs? So let's think about this. Babs, do you know how to play, and everybody else for that matter, do you know how to play a G major bar chord? And I would guess you probably do. So even though you might not know what notes you're playing, and don't get me wrong, I think it's important to learn that, but even if you don't know what notes you're playing, you can see that chord sitting right here on the fretboard. You can see this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this. You can see those notes sitting right there. So to create a melody, this note, this note, this note, this note, this note, or this note are functional. They're going to work. Okay? If my next chord, for instance, just stay with me, if my next chord was C, which is right there underneath, it's my fifth string bar chord, I could see this note, this note, this note, this note, and that note. I could see those two chords sitting in the same spot. So when the G chord is being played, I can emphasize something of the G, and when the C chord is being played, I can choose to emphasize something that is compatible with both chords, or I can emphasize something that's different from the C to the G. And that's a great way of creating melody from the fretboard theory logic. If that makes sense from everybody, that's huge. I mean, those are two completely different ways of approaching your fretboard. Neither one's right or wrong. It's what works for you. What's more creative for you to be able to use? Okay? So yeah, it's pretty awesome. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Okay, phrasing is learning how to take all of these notes and this meandering that we're doing and break it into pieces that begin to sound like melodies. Okay, so we're using these notes. Sorry, we'll try that again. I don't even know what I'm doing. I've started playing a Satriani tune, and I don't want to play a Satriani tune. I've got this going. It's just saying it's G and C. You're just playing G and C. Okay, so then G comes up, C comes up, and boom, I'm creating a melody. Now, if I do it again, I've got a melody line. That's how singers come up with things. Okay? Now, Bab says problem is moving to another place. That's why you got to study your fretboard. That's why you got to study your fretboard. Whether you're doing it from a fretboard logic or a theory logic, there's no getting around it, guys. I'm telling you right now, and if you've ever seen me, any of my stuff before, you know I always say this. You don't have to know everything about everything, and don't believe for a second that you do. I know people always say that you don't. What you do need, though, is you need to break down barriers that are in your way of making things make sense. I'll never learn everything about this fretboard before I die. This is not going to happen. But I do have enough walls that have been broken down that I can begin to make sense of things when I've got a solo over the kinds of music that I like to play. I am not a jazz guy. I love jazz, but I'm not a jazz guy. I don't want to waste your time. I'm going to tell you this story that'll only take 1 minute. In Fargo here, there's a jazz guy here in town who I go out and see all the time. And he came out to see me play one time. And he comes up to me after the show and he goes, "Man, I wish I could play like you." And I looked at him and I go, "Holy crap, I wish I could play like you." And that was really iconic for me, that discussion, just that small discussion, because we're good friends, but we play so differently. But that's not my calling. And what I do isn't his calling. They're two different kinds of things. So you need to spend the time making things make sense in your world. And that's really what real world soloing is all about. I don't know that you're going to get everything from it, but there's a lot of elements in there that you're going to be able to use to start making things make rock solid sense to you. That's what this all is about. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on now. I'm going to go back to the screen. I'm so sorry I got to keep going over here, but I got one more piece, two more pieces I got to get you before we end so you can start trying to study some of these things. And then, like I said, you can decide whether or not real world soloing is going to work for you. So here's our third one, everybody. I'm going to share the screen with you here. There we go. Okay, so the third one we've got here, guys. There we go. The third one is creative tools. Now, what are these creative tools? Meandering, like I just said. Plotting points. Chord chasing. This one's stinking cool. And then D, which is going to be creative shaping, which is one of my favorite things to do, but I play a lot of rock and things like that, but I just love these. So let's break these down a little bit after I shrink this down. And I'll leave this over here just in case I need the space. There, you should be able to see that. Okay, so right now we've got creative tools, meandering, plotting points, chord chasing, and creative shaping. Bob, I don't know if I'll be able to take any questions. I'm going to try and fill this as much as possible with stuff for you to use. But if you do have some questions regarding the course or anything like that, you can contact me. Let me type this in. It's pretty easy. It's Steve@guitarzoom.com. Okay, Steve@guitarzoom.com. And I'll try and answer your questions as best I can. I have a couple of people that help me with answering some of my emails when they get overloaded, as they often do, but I'll certainly do the best I can. So let's make sure we got those written down, guys. Creative tools, meandering, plotting points, chord chasing, and creative shaping. And then we're going to talk about that. Okay. Again, just give you a couple more seconds, and then I'm going to shut that off, and we're going to look at these things, and I'm going to explain to you what they are. And you can start on this stuff tonight. If you're in the mood for playing, man, you could get this stuff going. Okay, so The first thing, meandering, which I just talked about, let me summarize because we're running out of time. Meandering is awesome because if you were to learn how to play, let's just take the most basic of things, the pentatonic scale, okay? My sadness for the pentatonic scale is that what happens with a lot of players is that they learn, let's just take A minor pentatonic, for instance. They'll learn how to play that first position, and they'll kind of learn how to play the second position, or they'll learn the first and second position, but they never really learn the third position. I call that playing with tunnel vision, because you can only play, like if you don't really know the third position, first of all, you probably won't go there. And second of all, if you do go there in your solo, you're really not able to be creative because you're so busy thinking about whether or not you're playing the right notes or not. The goal with scales, the goal with chords, the goal with arpeggios, the goal with your notes on your fretboard is to be able to look down and see what you want. You don't need them all at the same time. If you don't know all your pentatonics, that's the perfect place for you to start. If you can't see your pentatonic across the fretboard, if you don't know your bar chords like that, okay? If you don't know those, when you look down, you can't see them, that's something that you should know. You have freedom in your ability of being able to look down confidently and see the things that you want. What meandering is awesome for, and again, we talk about this a lot in real world soloing, is that you can take a scale that you're studying and you can start learning how to road map across the fretboard freely, not the restrictions of phrasing and melody and plotting points. That isn't what meandering is about. Meandering is getting to know your fretboard. So you're playing in G major and you're going, and you're just moving around. You're just trying to think of things and see different avenues. As opposed to always just going, always doing that. You're trying to look at the fretboard and just see what kinds of things you can come up with. That's what meandering is. Plotting points is kind of like I was talking to Babs about, where I could utilize this meandering concept, but I could start targeting places to go on the fretboard as chords are being played. If a G comes up and I go, and then a D comes up, and then a C comes up, and then a G comes up, I could go to something else, whatever it might be, okay? Chord chasing, this is a huge one that I talk about in real world soloing that's really, really important. Chord chasing is if you come across something that is illogical. Let's say we're playing a chord progression that doesn't make sense, or there's a chord in there that doesn't fit traditionally in a scale or a key. You can start chord chasing, which means, let's say we're playing something like G major, D major, E flat major, and then C major. Okay? So we're just playing something that makes no sense, right? G, C, and D is awesome. E flat doesn't make any sense in the key of G. Okay? So chord chasing says when you're on the G chord, forget about everything else and just focus on playing something that you want that's based off the G major chord. And when D comes up, forget about the D and just play something that's centered around the D major chord, whether it's pentatonic, whether it's diatonic, whether it's shaping, whatever it might be. When the E flat comes up, you forget about everything else and you just play over the E flat. And when the C chord comes up, you just play over the C. Now, you could combine elements together. You might find that G, D, and C all fit in a key, but E flat does not. So you chord shape over the E flat. I mean, there's a million things that we could do when we talk about these in real world soloing. We might just adjust the scale to accommodate that E flat. We might just plot points over that E flat. We might play pentatonically over that E flat. There's a million different things that we could do to accommodate that one chord that doesn't fit. So we could look at all four chords individually, which is what chord chasing is, or we could just look at that one chord and break it apart and choose different ideas of things that we could do over that one chord in particular. Or we might even come across something where even though these three chords fit in a key and this chord does not, we're actually going to take this chord and we're going to use it with this chord. So now we've got a key for those two and a key for these two. There's a million different cool things that you can do. I mean, that's what's so awesome about this. You got to break out of you got to break out of just playing the same things over and over and over. Okay. So hopefully that's making sense to you a little bit. The last one is creative shaping. Now, creative shaping for me is really, really important when I'm soloing over things that don't make sense, or I'm soloing over songs like with metal, right? So I'm playing a metal chord progression. I don't know if we have any metal heads out there, but if I was playing a metal chord progression and I'm playing like, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter what it is, but metal traditionally does not make sense because it's trying not to do all the things that pop music and Southern rock and punk and all those things do. They're staying away from that. So as we move further from the 70s, moved into the 80s, moved into the 90s, and so on, things have gotten further and further away. Bravo says he lost the video. Does everybody else see me okay? Hopefully you all see me. Yeah? Okay, cool. So what creative shaping is you start looking at your fretboard completely different, and you start making up unique shapes when you solo. And you could use this in, again, I wouldn't use it when I'm soloing in Brown Eyed Girl, right? But I could use it when I'm soloing over something rock and roll for sure, okay? So Tony, I'll get to that in just a second. So let's say you wanted to chop off a couple things. I'm going to show you a couple little licks here that you can do that are pretty cool, that are shaping, that you could just use for whatever. So if you've got your guitar with you, what I want you to do is I want you to do this for me. I want you to go to the 7th fret of the 6th string and the 12th fret of the 6th string as well. So you have 7 and 12. Okay. Then I want you to do the same thing on the next string. You're going to go 7 and 12. Then you're going to go 7 and 12 again. Okay, then you're going to go 7 and 12 again. Then you're going to go on the 2nd string just for our purposes, and you could do whatever you want because it's shaping. But let's do 8 and 12. And then the 1st string is going to be 7 and 12 again. Now, as I play that, what I want you to notice is that the same note gets repeated over and over and over. There's a double in there every time. And what can make that really neat is when you're playing licks, you get this kind of cool sort of repeating idea that you could never do from just trying to pick a couple of times and whatever. It's a unique kind of thing. Another one that you can do, for instance, I don't know if we got any Pantera fans out there. But Pantera, like one of the cool things that Dimebag would do is he would shape all the time. So he would use, like, if you've ever heard Cowboys from Hell, he does 11, 12, and 15. So you're just taking this. And what it is it's based off a pentatonic idea. But he's changed the shape of it so it sounds a little more unique. You can do all kinds of neat stuff like that, okay? I'm going to show you a cool little shape pattern that I learned from George Lynch a long time ago, and it's always stuck with me because it makes no theoretical sense, but it's pretty cool if you like playing patterns and things like that. So let me show you this. All you're going to do is, let's say we were going to be in the key of G, for instance, or the key of E minor. Okay, this is just a lick for you, just so you can do whatever with. If you like it, you can use it. If you don't, throw it away. Okay, but what I want you to do is I want you to play 3, 5, 7, and then 3, 5, 7 again, which is based off a major scale. It makes theoretical sense, but it's not going to follow that pattern. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at this as a shape, creative shaping. We're playing 3, 5, 7, and you can do whatever you want with that shape. Then what we're going to do is we're going to move up and we're going to play 5, 7, 8. So we're going 3, 5, 7, and then 5, 7, 8. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to connect to 7, 8, 10. So we have 3, 5, 7, 5, 7, 8, 7, 8, 10. 3 shapes that are just connecting together. 3, 5, 7, 5, 7, 8, 7, 8, 10. Now we're going to go to 8, and we're going to start all over. We're going to play that spread fingering that we just did, and then the one first finger, third finger, fourth finger, and then we're going to play first finger, middle finger, pinky. So if you think about it, what's happening, for those of you that this might be kind of different for, I'm playing 3 shapes. I'm playing a spread fingering, which is whole step, whole step. Then I'm playing whole step, half step. And then I'm playing half step, whole step. That's all it is. You just keep repeating that. So watch this. I go whole step, 3, 5, 7. And then 5, 7, 8. Then 7, 8, 10. Thanks, Tom. Tom says he loves this kind of style. I do too. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to go to 8, 10, 12. There's our 2 whole steps. 10, 12, 13. 12, 13, 15. And then we're going to end with the spread fingering, 13, 15, 17. Okay? And after that, we're going to start all over again on another whole step. Okay? So again, it's just, the point is all this stuff is in real world soloing, and it's just shaping ideas that you can use. And it's not just over metal and things like that. It's over all kinds of different stuff. So I know that's a lot, and these webinars are tough because I always try and make sure that I add as much stuff as possible. So when you leave, you can grab your guitar, you can grab this piece of paper and go, all right, where do I go? What do I do? Where do I need to start? And again, please, always remember that as far as Guitar Zoom goes, our job is to try and make this as easy as possible for you. Real world soloing is one of my favorite courses simply because it really is. I was sitting there one day and I thought, what I need to do is try and get what's in my head out and get people thinking outside the box more, because that's where real music comes from. When you listen to Jeff Beck or you listen to Gary Moore or whatever it is, it's not just a scale. It's not just sitting down playing chords and scales. Yes, you need to do that, but it's in the way that you approach those things that really make things sound musical. Okay? So hopefully that helps everybody. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Francesca. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, guys. I'm glad that you were here, and I hope that helped you. If you have any questions, please get a hold of me. I won't be answering any emails tonight. I'm going to be hanging out with my family. But tomorrow, I certainly will get back to emails and all that sort of thing. But remember, as far as Guitar Zoom goes, if you purchase Real World Soloing and you decide you don't, it's not for your needs, you can always return it, and there's no problem with returning it. You have my email if you need to get a hold of me. I'm always here. So that's why I'm here, right? And for taking this webinar, I believe you get some free jam tracks or something like that. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, John. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Bravo. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, everybody. I certainly hope that this helped you. I hope you can walk away with something that gets you thinking about another level. Because for me, to be honest with you, yes, I need to feed my children, but that's not why I do what I do. I do this because I freaking love teaching. And I just love this interaction of being able to talk to you about guitar playing. And hopefully someday we can actually meet up somewhere and we can jam and talk about music and play some stuff and have a drink. It'd be awesome. So remember Facebook, we have a Facebook community page, a Guitar Zoom community page that you can sign up for and talk to people about, classes and stuff you're studying and things like that. And I'm on there quite often. So Guitar Zoom community. And like I said, don't be a stranger. I'm here. If you go on Guitar Zoom community, I'm there. If you have any questions about anything that I can help you with, me or my team will absolutely get back to you. If you have a problem with something, always reach out to me. So I am available. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for those of you that took obviously time out of your life to be here. I appreciate it so much. So have a wonderful day. And thanks everybody. Thank you so much. And take care.